about the revelations made by Mr. Moynihan, who was the ambassador in India at the time. And
Mhm.
once he retired, he published his memoirs, A Dangerous Place, in which he did a thorough
Mm.
review of CIA operations in the country. And he says, and you've quoted him over here, and this is page 188. Moynihan confirmed that to his knowledge, the CIA had twice intervened in Indian politics. On both occasions, the agency had funneled money to the ruling Congress party in a bid to head off the election of communist governments in Kerala and West Bengal. In one instance, the ambassador charged CIA money had been passed directly to Mrs. Gandhi, to Gandhi in her capacity as Congress party president. And I'm guessing Kerala, West Bengal, this will be in 57 and 59. And
Yep.
this was during the Eisenhower years. It was S.K. Patil, a Congress boss in the neighboring state of Maharashtra, who got the money. So these two statements over here, they're corroborating each other over multiple years. So what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Kerala example, there's just a book actually recently been published about Kerala and the Central Intelligence Agency, which I think is a reasonable, it's not very comprehensive, but it's a reasonable summary of what actually happened. I think by the time we get to 1957, there's a sort of coming together of interest between the Central Intelligence Agency, the Intelligence Bureau in India, and Indian politicians. I think Nehru, to some extent, was trying to distance himself from what was going on. So Indira Gandhi, as president of the Congress Party, really took over control of that operation. But it was a sense in which Congress was genuinely worried about the political gains the CPI was making in southern India and particularly in Kerala. And so the election of the first ever democratically elected communist government as a state government, it's not a national government, but it's still a state government in a really important state in a really important country. That sort of sends shockwaves around in the Cold War period. And you have to contextualize that. It's when the Soviets seem to be on the insurgency. You've got Sputnik. The Soviets seem to be, Khrushchev's coming out with this rhetoric about how the communism is advancing and it's going to overtake the West. And the West is really paranoid at that point about Soviet advances. And then we get the Kerala election, where the Soviets appear to have won, or the Communist Party of India could be democratically won the election.
CPI,
yeah, CPI. So really important psychologically, I think, for the United States, the United Kingdom, but also for India as well, in that the IB is genuinely concerned, as we mentioned, much more concerned than India is about communism. And the IB is able to go back to him and say, look, we told you so. Look, this is a real, genuine threat. And so Gandhi particularly, I think, is very, very keen to eliminate that threat. And she works very closely with both the Central Intelligence Agency and also, interestingly, British intelligence. So MI6 is really involved in that. So one of the things that as Moynihan doesn't tell us, which has sort of been written out the story, is the British are also involved in this as well. The British are also involved in covert operations in Kerala in the late 1950s and early 1960s to undermine the Communist Party there. So it's a joint effort between the British, Indian IB, and also the Central Intelligence Agency as well. And obviously we know it's very successful. They bribe trade union activists to sort of try and destabilize Kerala. There's lots of strikes, there's protests, a lot of which are funded by Western intelligence with support from the Intelligence Bureau as well. So it's again a pragmatic response to a Cold War problem as perceived by the United States and the United Kingdom, and a domestic problem politically as perceived by the IB and by India, really. But those interests coincide and come together with that action in Kerala. So it's interesting to know that while Gandhi and others in India are really critical about the Central Intelligence Agency interfering in India's internal affairs, when it suits Indian interest to work with Western intelligence agencies, and including the CIA, they're perfectly prepared to do so. So it depends upon your politics. You can approach that, well, that's great pragmatism. That makes sensible politics from one perspective. If you're an ideologue, you'll approach it and say, well, this is outrageous because this is not what India should be doing. So it's where you stand on that spectrum, I guess.